You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, welcome to episode 9. Before we talk about feeling broken, there was an article circulating a couple of months ago about how not everyone has an internal monologue. The author was floored by it, and so am I. Basically, this person had a revelation through informal polls that not everyone has conversations with themselves in their heads. What? I had a friend resend it to me recently because it had shown up in my newsfeed several different places, and the headline caught my attention originally, but I hadn't read it. I wanted to get familiar with this concept, as I just mentioned in my last episode, how to talk to yourself when you make a mistake and feel guilt. Also, because I plan to go deeper into the concept of self-talk, especially the negative kind in this episode. I'll link to the article in the show notes for your reference. I just want to be very clear that if you do not have an inner monologue, I do not understand. We should totally talk because I need to know how you experience life. And that's exactly what Ryan Langston, the author of this article, did. He asked his friends, he asked his followers, and when a percentage, a small percentage mind you, said they don't have an inner voice, he says, life is no longer what I thought it was. Seriously. I don't just have an inner voice, I have an inner mean bitch. She is sometimes relentless, and I've only recently learned in the past couple of years that my inner mean bitch does not define me. I've learned not so much how to fight back, but to dismiss that voice for what it is. Absolute bullshit. And that's why I want to share with you today a pretty heavy story of my near-death experience and how a period of very deep self-loathing followed because I was thoroughly convinced I was broken. I want to share this with you in that spirit of Mental Health Awareness Month, where I have been going into the depths of the worst feelings I can think of. And I felt compelled to share them with you because I want you to understand that you're not alone if you have these feelings. For me, when I think about how to honor mental health awareness, I want to shine a light in the darkest corners of the psyche and be the example of what's possible. You don't have to stay in those dark corners. There is a way out of the hole. Doesn't mean you'll be happy all of the time or even feel okay, but you don't have to spend your days feeling like you're a defective human. I spent many years feeling like a defective human. I felt completely and utterly broken. My near-death experience came with my second ectopic pregnancy. Now, I'm stating the facts, and I'm sorry if any of this is triggering for you, but I encourage you to stay with me because if you are triggered, it means you have some healing to do. And sometimes that path is going to include hearing stories that you'll have thoughts and feelings about. Just remember, that's all they are, thoughts and feelings. Those will not kill you, but an ectopic pregnancy might. If you're not sure what that is, here's a quick refresher on biology. A fertilized egg travels back through the fallopian tubes in order to attach to the uterus. An ectopic pregnancy is one that occurs outside of the uterus. Usually it doesn't make it out of the tube, but it can be stuck anywhere other than the uterus. The thing is, you'll have a positive pregnancy test because you do, in fact, have an embryo growing inside of you. It's just not in the right place. And that's how my first doctor explained it to me with my ultrasound. I see the heartbeat, but sorry, it's not in the right place. It's lodged in your tube. And we'll have to do emergency surgery today because what can happen is as the embryo grows, the tube will rupture, you'll bleed internally, probably without even knowing that you're bleeding internally, and this can be fatal. I had the surgery and was sent home with my stitches to heal. Physically now, because from that point forward, I felt broken. Why? This happens quite a lot, more than we know, and probably more than we talk about. It's not a miscarriage that happens on its own, and I want to make it very clear right now that this is not a compare and despair scenario, not this movie. Grief is accompanied with every loss, regardless of how it happens. Grief may come every month that a pregnancy doesn't occur when your ultimate goal is to create a family. It's all pain, and left unattended, any of it can linger in those dark corners. What I just want to make known, in case you aren't familiar with that topic, is that extra layer of danger while you're waiting 8 weeks for the first checkup and this embryo is growing in your tube. So honestly, after that first incident, I felt like a failure as a female human. My inner monologue went something like, "What good are you? You can't even perform the basic function your body was designed to do. You're a failure." Years of this, my friends. Years of berating and loathing myself and drinking to drown out that voice. Of course, the bitch never went away, because trying to drown her or numb away her voice just prolonged the pain. Almost a decade, in fact. Going to baby showers, hating every minute of it, but pretending to be happy. Bouncing around to different therapists to try to reconcile the feelings I was having that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't whole, and I wouldn't be unless I could have a baby. All of this came from my values and beliefs. I placed a high value on having children. It's something that I honestly believed was my inherent right. The right to bear children. Ha! It was written in my brain because it was something that I'd grown up believing was simply an essential part of being female. Traditionally, we play with dolls, we play house, we mimic the adults around us. Some of us pretend to be mommies before we're potty trained. No kidding. Not me. That wasn't me. I was climbing trees and skinning knees. I did, however, play games in my preteens with picking out names if it's a boy or a girl during endless slumber parties with my girlfriends. I envisioned being a mom someday in a fairly entitled way, I think. It was just a given, a societal expectation, and I was here for all of it. That's partially how my values were formed. And beliefs we'll definitely continue to revisit, but our beliefs are essentially the thoughts we think over and over, repeatedly, until they form a well-traveled path in our brains. I believed that being a whole woman meant creating a new life. I believed that it was my right, not a privilege, but a right, to be able to perform this basic function, especially when everyone else around me was doing it. And finally, I believed that I would be happy when I became a mother. That the inner bitch would finally shut up. What I couldn't see is that it was the inner bitch creating those beliefs in the first place. Now, I just told you about my first ectopic pregnancy. We haven't even gotten to the near-death experience. That came about 10 years later, I believe. The dates have become less meaningful to me over the years, but there was a time when I could have rattled it right off to you. I can still tell you the dates, the actual days, just not the years. It isn't relevant really anymore. What matters is that since I had a history and it had been so long, I hadn't been using any birth control. I'd had tests done after the first surgery and had already been told the chances were really slim, like less than 1%, maybe less than half a percent. It was really, really low. And so all of that time later, when I had a positive home pregnancy test, I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this is going to happen after all. Maybe I'm not a total loser. I was sent for a blood test to check my hormone levels, and my doctor would be able to tell if it was probably ectopic if they were really low. That would mean it was most likely tubal again. It would take a couple of days for the results to come back from the lab, and so I was sent home to wait. And that very night is when the excruciating pain set in. I mean, it is hard to describe how bad it hurt, but it was the middle of the night and I knew this wasn't good. I couldn't even move. So we had to have an ambulance come so I could lay on the gurney. That's how I found myself in another emergency surgery, only this one was in the ER. And the doctor who did the surgery would later tell me that he'd never seen anyone with that amount of blood in the abdominal cavity live to tell about it. That's what the excruciating pain was. There was nowhere else for the blood to go, so my abdominal walls felt like they were going to burst. My husband would later tell me that the color had drained from my face and my lips were blue the last time he saw me, and that it was terrifying. My tube had obviously ruptured this time. I had been walking around, going about my life while I was bleeding internally for days, probably long before I even took the test. And this is why you don't play with ectopic pregnancies. So, while I had never fully healed emotionally from the first incident, I was an absolute wreck after the second one. While my inner mean bitch never fully went away, she resurfaced full force after the second one, and it was bad. It was like, look what a scene you made, ambulance and all. What will people think? I'm sure the neighbors are talking. What are you going to tell people anyway? No one talks about this shit. And if we do talk about it, it seems like it might just be an exercise in self-pity, or that we are seeking attention for the traumas we have endured. Poor me, definitely infertile now, no tubes left, broken. Why am I telling you this now? Have we gotten any better about talking openly about our pain? Certainly not. I think most of us still want to hide it. I know that I did. When I had to take 6 weeks of sick leave from work, and in a very sudden manner, of course I knew that I didn't have to tell anyone why, and I did keep it to myself for the most part. I started seeing a therapist again because that seemed to be the only real path to take. I would go in and purge my feelings, cry for an hour, and leave. Rinse and repeat. And I still felt broken. Probably even more so because the mean bitch would say, see, you're too broken for the professionals to fix. I'm telling you this story now because many of us have been through traumatic experiences, and what happens when we don't know what to do with our thoughts about them is that we make it mean something about us. We allow ourselves to be defined by our traumas. We don't even realize that it's the inner monologue about the trauma that is sowing the seeds of belief, not the trauma itself. The ectopic pregnancy is neutral. I know that's hard to reconcile, but it really is. It's simply a biological phenomenon. How do we know? Because 10 different people will have different thoughts about it. Certainly mine will be the deepest and most painful thoughts, but to you listening now, you may have a very different thought about it, just the circumstance of an ectopic pregnancy. That's how you can always find the neutral part of your story. Take a step back and find the part that 10 people will agree on. This happened, period. That's it. There's no disputing it. And as I've mentioned, sharing this isn't meant to compare the despair. There are certainly many humans who have had even worse experiences if we're going to do a comparison scale, if there were such a thing. I wouldn't be the slightest bit interested in plotting that out, seeing where mine landed. I only know what it felt like to live my movie. I think we can all agree that horrible things sometimes happen as part of our experience, but they don't become horrible until our thoughts come into play. Another trauma could be that you lose someone close, a beloved family member dies. The death itself, actually neutral. Because before you know about it, at the risk of coming across as cold or callous, the fact of the matter is that it's a thing that happened. Part of the cycle of life includes death. That's always true. But when you find out about it and you have the thought, I'm devastated, then the grief process kicks in hard and you're riding that wave for however long it takes you. The grief doesn't begin at the instant the death occurs. The grief kicks in when your thoughts about it engage. Physical abuse, rape, other types of violence that you may have witnessed or had happen to you, many people have. We can acknowledge that some people handle these experiences of trauma better than others. Some can overcome them and others become defined by them. They see themselves as broken and they stay there. They give in to the thoughts that further tear them down and either live in despair, try to numb it all away, or run and hide from it. We can put all of these experiences in a bucket and define them as horrible, but not every human has the same reaction to them. What gives some people the ability to rise above their circumstances that most would agree are awful and still end up living a good life? A life that is whole and, while never free from pain, because we'll always have that contrast of darkness and light, they don't shatter like glass when bad shit happens. Certainly on my path, I have met other women who have suffered loss that I can identify with. And even saying that now gives me such a realization combined with what I have learned. That realization is we only suffer because of our thoughts. Some of us suffer greatly, unnecessarily, endlessly. Some of us seem to find comfort in the discomfort. I'm supposed to be miserable. This is how it's supposed to be. Just a thought. Repeated enough, it can become a belief. I do think that is true. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I also have come to form new beliefs around traumas. I have always felt on some level that everything happens for a reason. I bought into that a long time ago and I'm still in there. I've just expanded on that a bit. I think nothing happens to you. Everything that happens for you. You see, the moment that you say, this awful thing happened to me, you're making it personal. You're making it mean something about you. You are questioning your self-worth and your value as a human. If you change just one word and begin to look at it from a place of, this happened for me, you can open yourself up to new possibilities. What can I learn from this? How does having had this experience give me strength? What can I do with this? Who can I help? Do you see the difference? Such a powerful way to approach it, and one that we don't often consider. instead of settling into the role of the victim, a victim of circumstance, you can be the phoenix rising from the ashes, lit the fuck up. Wow, I just came up with that. I'm on fire. Seriously, I spent a lot of years thinking the way to get lit was to have a lot of drinks and numb the pain. Self-medicating is not the answer. I don't recommend it. But I also look at the time I spent doing that as an experience worth having too. I promise I can tell you all the things that don't fucking work to ease your suffering. I've given you the ways and the things that you need to do. I've already given that to you between this podcast episode and previous episodes. Here we go. You need to allow yourself to feel the feelings. You can't numb them away or hide from them or run from them. You can't change your circumstances to feel better. Remember how I said earlier that I had this belief that if I could be a mother, I would be whole? I would feel whole. I would feel happy and rainbows and sunshine would fly out of my ass on a daily basis. Well, I didn't say that part, but you know what I mean. Guess what? That's not how I live my days. You know, when you have this belief that as soon as you get what you want, the moon and the stars and all of the planets will align and all will be right with the universe, yeah, that doesn't work either. You find out that it's no better there than it was here. You find out that life is still half amazing and half terrible. You still have the contrast of emotions and all of the feelings. No matter where you go and no matter what you achieve, it's always there. So that's the first thing. Know that you have to be with your feelings when traumatic events happen. There are all sorts of resources on navigating the grief cycle, but that's usually more from a what to expect approach. Really sit with your feelings and fucking process them. The second thing is to be wise to the fact that life won't be better if you blank, fill in the blank, whatever that is for you. It just won't. That's not how it works. Because your brain comes along for the ride. It's always with you. And if you haven't learned to manage it, none of the changes you make to your circumstances are going to make things better. Not having kids, changing jobs, changing partners, moving, becoming rich and famous. Trust me, I know this to be true. I've tried all of the things except the rich and famous part, but there's plenty of evidence from others about all of it. I'm not a special unicorn that's tried everything to escape. Go back and listen to episode 7 if you need a refresher on that point. And don't worry, I'll continue to talk about this misguided vision that we have, that life will be better if we just change the people that are in it, the place, or the balance in the bank account. That's some fucked up thinking. And we have got, but a lot of us fall into it. The third thing is that you need to be onto your thoughts. Onto your thoughts. So when you have a traumatic experience, there's certainly a time that you need to feel and process your emotions. You need to feel to heal. Be with them. Acknowledge them. Then start to observe where they are coming from. What's that inner mean bitch saying to you? Those of us who have that voice, and I swear, those of you who do not, you may as well be aliens from another planet to me. Those of us who have that voice find themselves letting it rule without question. It's so wild. And there's a way to take control of that, which I will share in next week's episode because this one is getting long enough. Now, because I wanted to touch on the hardest things I could think of during the month of May, I hope I have not disappointed. Damn, I've covered grief, despair, self-worth, trauma. I may need to lighten things up a bit in June, huh? But wait, there's more. May isn't quite over yet. I'm going to give you a bonus episode on anxiety because I don't think we can fully round out this party without inviting anxiety. I mean, she is so much fun, right? But I'm going to be specific about pandemic anxiety because some of you all are freaking out a bit right now as things start to open back up, and I want to help you. That's why I'm going to tack it on as a happy little bonus. So look for that too if you're interested. And now it is time for a quote by L.R. Nast. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go. Love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. Love it. When I've mentioned before that I wish I had known years ago what I know now, I think back to this time in particular often. No therapist, support group, inpatient setting, family member, or close friend could give me what I needed most, and that was me. Remember to talk to yourself as you would the love of your life. After all, the person you will spend the most time in this life with is waiting to hear it. Give her some love. Stay with me and I'll show you how to be the person you've always needed to. That's what this is truly about. That's what I'm here for. That's why the things that have happened in my life have happened for me, so that I could learn to show up for myself as the person I need most instead of looking for someone else or something else to light me up, and also to show up for you. Thank you so much for listening to Light the Fuck Up. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Sunny the Life Coach. Reach out, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I look forward to hearing from you. Shine on.